You're misleading the public. You're lying to people.
We are part of a giant studio set. All the world's a stage and you're on it.
Jesus Christ, can suck my dick? Suck my dick?
Suck my dick, Earth, with that bullshit.
Man's getting rude. Man's getting rude.
It could be a what's it? It could be an onion ring.
A hairless monkey jumping through the vacuum, or a potato rod.
Yeah, if we dumped what we found right now, it'd be bad. It would be bad.
Can't have a can't have a flat earth and things making sense.
Good evening, YouTube, and welcome to another edition of Gem's Flat Earth Sunday Roast. We're back once again with our almost weekly roundup of news and views from across the imaginary plane. I'm your host, Gem, and on our panel this evening, with their sunny side up, it's all the cool kids from the Debate Flat Earth and More Discord server. They are Cat Earth, Curved, Kosho, Quartus, M. Scott Veach is there somewhere because he's just sent me a message, and Lewis.
Can I make one comment? Two comments.
Yeah,
one,
make a few because I've got to sort Scott out.
Okay, so first one, I've upgraded above you now, Lewis, because I got called out above you. You used to get called out above me. And that means, I know you love the social dynamic thing books, so there you go. Ha! Chew on that.
I'll have to do something about that.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to have to bribe Gem. And number two, we need to all congratulate Twitwit because she's recently come out as a lesbian, and and I just wanted to, congratulate her. That's great. We're all very happy for her. So I just thought everyone should say, good work, Twitwit. Congratulations.
I'm not sure if that's entirely true. I think as the producer of the show, I should maybe disassociate myself from that comment.
No, I heard it was true.
Well, we've been missing Twitwit on the show. That's
really
for sure.
have. We need the voice of reason that Twit brings to the show. So anyway, she's out with her mates getting drunk, so that's probably better.
Is it just me, real quick, before we really get into it? Is anybody else hearing a sort of echo of the show coming from somewhere?
I'm not.
You're not? Is anybody else hearing that? Is it just me?
I'm not hearing it.
Okay, never mind.
It's just you. You're the spaz.
Damn it. All right, let's get on with it.
Yeah, let's get on with it.
Yeah, let's get on with it.
Okay, then. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that we've really cracked it in terms of content this week, which we have poached from across Flat Earth YouTube. So before my brain is fried trying to come up with more egg-related puns, I'll just say it's said that you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. You can, however, debunk all of known physics without breaking one. Here is Sunday Roast favourite Sleeping Warrior to tell us more. He said, as he hadn't got the thing ready in any way whatsoever. Bear with me.
Here's a fun question for Riley. What's denser, an egg or water? If all that matters is relative density, then the egg should sink.
Funny you should ask that question. Today's video will be doing a little bit of science, and we will be observing how we can manipulate the medium by changing the density and create a force. Newton said, where there is an acceleration, a force must be present. Today's video is all about science.
From Colorado Science and Engineering Fair, the independent variable is the variable which an experimenter deliberately manipulates in an experiment.
From Penn State University, there should be three types of variables in every experiment: the dependent, independent, and the controlled. The independent variable is what is varied during the experiment. It is what the investigator thinks will affect the dependent variable.
From explorable.com, the independent variable. This is what you change in order to provide a result.
From award-winning awardco.com, an independent variable is the variable that is changed or controlled
in a scientific experiment to test the effects on the dependent variable.
From the University of North Carolina. In an experiment, the independent variable is the variable that is varied or manipulated by the researcher, and the dependent variable is the response that is measured.
According to the GCSE citation in experiments, variables are used to help determine the cause and the effect.
From practicalphysics.org, that's the Institute of Physics. The independent variable is the variable that is deliberately changed by the experimenter.
From the University of Southern California, the dependent variable is the presumed effect. The independent variable is systematically manipulated by the investigator. It is the presumed cause.
From Indiana University. Independent variables are felt to cause some change in the dependent variables. They are manipulated by the researcher.
By sciencing.com, the independent variable is the variable that the scientist changes during the experiment. Think of the experiment as a cause and effect exercise. The independent variable is the cause factor.
FE is getting the message. The independent variable must be manipulated. It is the presumed cause. There can only be one independent variable. This is science. You cannot substitute in or introduce or suggest alternative causes. That would fall outside scientific method because there's no citations that allow you to do it. There is an important difference between physical causation and rational inference. Tim Osman calls this logic and reason. Causation is a physical process that happens in the real world, whereas inference is a mental process that occurs in the mind of a rumpus or a geostreber. There is a big difference between saying the physical event, the egg physically moves, or changing the density of the medium produced the egg moving, and knowing that an event or a gravitational force exists, that I can infer that that caused the movement. There is a big difference between the two. Surprisingly, perhaps one of the most common confusions in thinking about causation, or even among philosophers, in this case Rumpus, is to get mixed up with the inference. Do not make this mistake. Talking about you, Rumpus.
This is an egg. This is a parts per million counter. Inspired by Jaren's most recent video. If you haven't checked it out, go to his channel, and it's called something like How and Why I Drink Distilled Water. He used one of these and he measured the amount of particulates per million in his tap water. I decided that I could apply what he used, this little bit of technology, not science, this is technology. I could apply this technology and I could perform a practical scientific experiment where I could measure the density of a medium, in this case water, and I can make this egg move all by itself with just a little bit of salt. I can observe my phenomena to be that some objects appear to float, some objects appear to sink, some objects will suspend in different mediums. My hypothesis is if I change the medium's density, the egg will move. Newton said, if an object moves, a force is present. My null hypothesis is that if I change the density of the medium, the egg will not move. I will activate one of the hypotheses. My independent variable, my presumed cause that I must manipulate in an experiment, is the density of the medium. My dependent variable is the movement of the egg. I will also try and keep everything else constant. The volumes of water, not will change, just the density of the medium. Let's see how I'm going to do this. This is my egg. This is my parts per million counter. This is going to measure the parts per million of both these fluids. This is tap water, regular tap water. That is the same tap water
but it's been preloaded to save some time with some salt from this to give it a density variation. It's going to measure the density of the tap water. Okay, that's coming in at 212 parts per million tap water. Don't know what that means. It's just a number. It could be unicorn farts. It's just a number. So 212 is the recorded density of this one. Mind you, I should have showed that to the camera, shouldn't I? It's coming in at 214 now. So if you want to zoom in on that, it says 214 parts per million. Okay. Back to 0. When I do it to this one is saying this is 302 parts per million. Again, if you want to zoom into that, you can have a look. Okay, so basically 200 to 300. That tells me that there is a density variation between the two. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what happens when this egg is dropped into here. It sinks and it's touching the floor. Let's take the egg out. Now we'll see what happens when we put it into a more dense medium. So whilst that's settling down, this was done last night because it takes ages for it to dissolve and it get to a point where it's saturated. And I've got some residue at the bottom that is salt. So at the bottom at least it's getting relatively saturated. So I'm going to give it a stir to stir it up so that it evenly distributes a little bit better. Because what I'm hoping to do is get the egg so that it's just sat above the bottom of the thing. Some people will argue and complain and say that I shouldn't have stirred it, I should have left it as a gradient. It doesn't really matter. Because what we're trying to establish is, if the medium is different, does it make a displacement? Does it force a displacement? If it forces a displacement, according to Newton, there is force. This is just normal table salt from your favourite supermarket. Other supermarkets are available. We can tell that the density of the egg is equal to the part in the glass where the liquid is. What I'm now going to try and prove is that if I change the density of the medium, I will cause the effect by adding salt. So if I can change it, because I'm the experimenter and I'm manipulating my presumed cause, my independent variable is the medium, that egg moves, I've caused it. We know the parts per million is about 300. All we need to do is pour some of this in. Hey, what do you know? The eggs immediately moved. Didn't have to wait for that, did we? So, what's the explanation? So what's the cause? Well, scientific method states that the independent variable is the presumed cause, and I presumed that changing the density of the liquid with salt would cause a displacement. Newton's first law of motion states that every object will remain at rest unless acted upon by a force, and I've obviously created a force. The density of the medium has displaced the egg. The egg moved. That's an accelerating mass. So therefore, Newton states that there is a force. I caused it with this. So in scientific method, the cause of the displacement is this. I've caused it. I've manipulated it. I added the salt. It caused something. I did it. I'm within scientific method. If you assert that gravity in any way caused something in this experiment, that means you are adding a secondary cause. Adding by inference. If you add a secondary cause by inference, you fall outside of scientific method because you can't infer an extra cause when you've already got one that you've manipulated. If you wish to move outside of scientific method, sure, be my guest. Infer that gravity caused in any way whatsoever the effect that we just witnessed, which was the egg moving. But you do so outside of scientific method. And we know by definition, if you are not complying with scientific method, you are practicing pseudoscience. I am staying within scientific method, and I am using my cause and my effect relationship, and I am demonstrating it with using this.
I've changed the density of the medium, and the egg has displaced.
He
that
is the variable.
Wow.
It's him.
But it's hard to believe, but he has dropped in my esteem. Like, that's astonishing, isn't it?
He's raised in mine. I
Who
want to congratulate
would like
Riley
to
on
get
the
their teeth
successful
into that?
egg.
I think it would be good to get a sort of a debunk of the physics right here, right now, before we do the gossipy bit. If do you know what I mean?
Well,
if someone could address that.
Like, all he's done is change the density. If his hypothesis was that changing the density will change the buoyancy of the egg, then that's true, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's fine. But it doesn't explain, and it's also something else he brought up, which I feel like he didn't address, was Newton says that if there's acceleration, there's a force. Well, the egg stopped accelerating, so it reached a balance. So the net force in both situations was 0. So was he trying to debunk Newton? If he was trying to, he didn't really wrap that up. There isn't even much to disagree with there, because a lot of the things that he said were true, but they didn't prove gravity wrong.
There isn't much to disagree with.
There's a lot to disagree, actually. I mean,
don't want to die on that.
I know Scott's keen to get in, and I know Quartus is as well. So fight amongst yourselves, perhaps.
I'll just say one thing, which is that at the very end he had this thing about like, well, you can't introduce a secondary cause. Like, we got a cause. I've announced what it is. Only if you really go back and listen to him, what he says is the salt is the cause. The salt is saturating the water, and the salt causes it to reach buoyancy. And then he sort of smoothly switches into I caused it. No, it was me. It was I.
It was I.
Yeah, it was I, which he was very proud of. But so right away we have these. We can see that he's already recognized that he's indirect, because he's the one adding the salt. The salt's doing something, right? He's not in there with the salt, and so almost right away he's caused this exact problem that he's sort of warning us against with himself by identifying multiple causes. But of course, the truth is at the end of the day, we can get a whole chain of causes, right? Like, we can say, as long as we're indirect with them, we can get 15 causes in a row if we want, as long as each one leads to the next, which leads to the next, which leads to the final result. Yeah. So.
Cool. Go ahead, Quartus.
Oh, I don't know what I could add to that. That was appalling. I like the glasses, though. That's nice. That's a nice touch for him.
It's worth adding this, which is that what's going on there is that the salt and the water, when they mix up like that, they're creating their own sort of force. Like, the water becomes stronger in a sense, and there's intermolecular forces going on. They're bouncing off, molecules are bouncing off of each other, and when you add enough stuff to the water so that the force of that is greater than the weight of the egg, that's when it starts moving up, or that's when it stops falling. And that is very much buoyancy and density. That's those two things, and they only work in concert with the gravity vector. You cannot, you need something pushing down in one way for buoyancy to work in the other way, which is something I don't understand why they've never addressed, but is sort of right there in the first definition,
Right.
First sentence of buoyancy.
It doesn't explain why all the dense stuff goes down. It doesn't explain that.
That's right.
So great video,
Yeah.
Riley. It didn't really help anything.
He asserts he's the force, yet it takes gravity to put the salt in the water. It takes gravity to make the buoyancy work in there. And so, yeah, he just looked like a mad scientist, if you ask me. It was kind of gave me a eerie feeling.
Well, do you know
watching
what?
that.
Eerie's right. I felt, and this is what I'll say about it. I won't comment on the physics, but what I'll say is this: that he sounded really creepy in that, I thought. And the other thing that I thought was significant about it was the way he'd got all these flat earthers to sort of line up and chant the doctrine.
Yeah.
You know? And he said, there's a bit in there where he says, FE is getting the message.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as if he's sort of responsible for, directing the scientific progress of flat Earth.
Well, he's helping poison it now.
Something else that came through that I think was creepy was how he also said that this piece of technology right here, this is not science. This is technology.
Yeah,
And
not science.
Acknowledge it.
It's like he's having flashbacks from that time that Nathan Oakley went on Bob's show and said, "No, none of those things are science, Bob. It's not science."
Well, I think Riley's experiment was excellent.
Yeah.
And I don't think you boys can explain what happened.
It was extraordinary.
Scott, were you saying you'd seen him do something with a balloon? I haven't seen
Yeah,
this.
yeah. He has another one with a balloon that's similar, where he blows up a balloon and it rises. And he's trying to figure out why. And it's very similar, but it's one of these things where it's just like as you increase that surface area of the balloon, you're giving more and more atmosphere a chance to push up.
Yeah.
And the bigger you get it, and you're not changing the weight at all just by inflating it, or you're changing weight very little, I should say. And so yeah, he shows this demonstration and he declares, I forget exactly how he declares that one, but he declares it's something similar. He says it can't be gravity; it has to be relative density, is what he calls it. He says relative density is the cause of the force. But again, what's going on there is the same thing going on with the salt. It's just a matter of getting the underneath air to be strong enough on the thing that it's acting on, and that can happen in a variety of ways. One of which is lots and lots of surface area and very light.
Well, it's the Archimedes principle. If the volume of water that's displaced is equal to the weight of the object, then it's neutrally buoyant.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. That's what sucks. Is that the density, or whatever the density law or relative densities, it's like that's kind of is what it's doing indirectly. So it's like it's hard to just to throw that out, and because if you describe it to somebody and they're like, yeah, that's relative density, you're like, well, yeah, but there's a reason for that. There's something that's causing it to do that. It's not just the density itself. It's telling stuff where to go.
You know what it is, Coach? It's like if that was the only experiments ever done in the history of time, then I guess we'd have multiple ways we could explain it. But as soon as we take those experiments and do sort of different things with them, like as soon as we take a density tower into a parabolic flight and we see what happens, we can start ruling things out. Or as soon as we recognize that parabolic flight works in the first place, we can start ruling things out. And that's sort of how these things become absurd. It's like they do one experiment, they get to one of many conclusions, but declare for some reason that's the only conclusion.
Right.
Right.
Well, it's I don't know why they don't just.
Sorry, go ahead, Liz. Go ahead.
I was just going to throw it. We've said this so many times. I don't know why they don't just declare explicitly for everybody to hear that there just is an up and down in nature. If they did that, then they would have their force, and they wouldn't have to do all this dancing around.
Well, there's a problem with that, which is so ironic because we talk all about gravity, but really the only thing we need, and when we're talking flat Earth, is that downward force, because that downward force is the answer to why does water stick to a ball. That downward force is an answer to why is there no container. And so it doesn't even matter. All these details don't matter as long as we all agree there's a downward force, which I don't see how they can disagree with that.
Right.
But
if we... All right.
No, go ahead. It's interesting you say that, Liz, because we've got a clip coming next that addresses that. But go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you say that it's gravity, though, which is mass attracting mass, and this is the downward force, then we can get into the Cavendish experiment. Whereas if you just think it's just there's an up and down in nature and the Earth's flat and everything moves towards this flat Earth, then you don't have to worry about Cavendish. But Cavendish does support gravity with mass attracting mass.
Yeah, for them it's not it's pseudoscience, Cavendish.
Yeah, it's good to read.
Speaking of mass attracting mass, we should not forget that Riley does have what it takes to go for the threesome, and I think we need to give him points for that.
What about that meter he's using? Is that actually measuring the density of the water?
I'm not sure what that was measuring. It didn't really go into it.
Right. And he
I've
actually
never
says,
used
I don't know
one,
what
but
it's measuring. It could be unicorn farts. And
right, exactly.
I
always thought that
that's not a
there were
very
different
scientific approach, Anthony.
I always thought there were different types of these things that measure parts per million. Don't they detect certain types of elements in a parts per million?
I think salts and things like that. And I was thinking, it just occurred to me as we were watching it, but I think someone can perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, but don't you use something that measures the density of the water in winemaking? You measure. Oh no, you measure specific gravity. Is what.
Yeah, I think that's true. I've heard that before. Yeah, you're right.
Is it? I don't know. But anyway, I wonder if that is actually the right tool for the job.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it would work with, a solution, not particles suspended, which is what parts per million I would think.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm wrong. Maybe
I don't know about that either, right? Because I don't know if it detects a mixture or a solution. Because a solution, it's actually chemically bonded. So I don't know that it would even be able to do that.
Right.
Well, also, he never bothered to put it back in after he added all that salt to show how high the reading went then.
I know, and plus there's that stirring in there as well.
And
the egg went
stirring's
flying
fine.
up.
Like, we all know that salt water and fresh water have different density and different buoyancy for things in them. So I mean,
yeah,
no
I
one's
guess
really
so.
going to give him pushback on that
I
because
guess
we all
so,
know
yeah.
that that's true.
You're right. All right. Well, let's talk about. Get back to what you were saying about relative directions. Here he is again. Just a couple more minutes of him. But I think it's worth playing this. Let me see, where are we? Okay, here we go. He said, not ready again.
Is there an absolute up and down? It saddens me to see some flat earthers thinking that there is an absolute up and down. To reference the Earth, you are applying a frame of reference. You are applying a frame of reference. Pay attention, boys and girls, this is not difficult. Even Fight the Flat Earth should get his head around this. It's not something that's considered to be difficult for, grown-ups. The most common relative directions are left, right, forwards, backwards, up and down. Literally the first line tells you that the relative directions are up and down. Next line. No absolute direction corresponds to any of the relative directions. And then, as we're all into the flat earth discussion, for those of you that still think that somehow this can be dispensed with, here's the science that proves it. As demonstrated by the Michelson-Morley null result, there is no absolute inertial frame of reference. Yeah, it's relative. It's not absolute. Stop misleading people. Just accept that you've got it wrong. We all understand it. Why is such a small portion of flat earth not getting their heads around this? It's embarrassing, guys. Black and white, come on.
But it's all about if it's all about ego, why is it like that everybody's mentioning it? Like, why isn't it just one person?
Yeah. And it's like you were saying, I just think there's an up and down in nature. It's just such a much better argument for them. That's it. You don't need anything more than that. You just say the universe is set up this way, and that's the end of the argument. So I don't understand why he's picked this hill to die on, really. But I wanted to put that in because it's creepy. I thought he was creepy. And again, he seems to have this idea that everybody's got to think exactly the way he is doing, and he's absolutely got it right.
Yeah, otherwise they're childish and like all of the enemies. And I think what really bothers me, it actually doesn't have much to do with what he's saying. It's how close he gets to the microphone.
It was creepy.
Yeah.
You know what though? It's not that different from what he's always doing. Like that's what I'm saying. If you stop arguing with him, he just starts arguing with them. He's just arguing stupid things. He's always doing this, arguing just the weirdest things ever. But my point about it is, there is an up and down. If it's a flat plane, there is only one up and down. I just don't understand what you can't get about that. I mean, I'm not smart.
Well, no, I don't understand what his argument is, because it seems like this is almost like a anti-flat Earth argument. Like it's an argument somebody would use against them. I mean, I've said it to plenty of flat earthers that that up and down is a relative direction, just like left and right. Whereas on flat Earth, wouldn't relative direction not make any sense? Because there'd only be one up and one down.
There's only one up and one down. And he's just being picky and arguing with them. Do you know what I mean? He's just looking for things to argue about.
But doesn't he need this to make his relative density thing work?
Maybe, yeah. I haven't been paying that much attention. I just thought it was a stupid video. Yeah.
Well, I don't know, because if he denies what Newton said about if there's an acceleration of any kind, there is a force, but he brought it up, but he never addressed it again. But it felt like he wanted to debunk that, but he never did. But denying that there's enough.
He was saying he was agreeing with it. He was saying that's true. We're going to accept that as true, and then he moved forward with that. So he was saying Newton was right about that.
I don't know. It felt like there was a yes but sort of thing, but he never brought it up. Am I the only one who got that feeling?
I don't know.
Yeah, same here. I don't understand. It seems like he's arguing against himself almost.
Right.
I don't really get it.
I just don't know why he would bother to do this. It's very odd. But he's obviously got in a row with somebody about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, some of the stuff that they argue about doesn't make sense, and what ends up happening is, like, this happens with Arwen a lot, where Arwen will sit there and be like, wait a minute. And, like, it'll start trying to make sense of it, and QE and Nathan will tell him to shut up because he's, like, going against what they're saying. But I think that that's possibly what's happening is Riley's like, he's probably got an argument with somebody. And yeah, and on Earth and in reality, up and down is relative, but it certainly doesn't help a flat Earth argument. So that's the reason why they would argue against that.
And what was he even trying to point out with that last video? That, like, you have to have a reference point for left, right, up and down and forward and backward to mean anything? Obviously. But like,
I like the way he just goes to Wikipedia as well. Look, it says it in Wikipedia. I'm not quite sure you still get to use that, Anthony.
So I didn't get to chime in a few minutes ago. I apologize, but that thing he's using to test the water, it's a total dissolved solids meter. It basically measures conductivity. It's a proxy for the purity of water, so you could use it to see if your water's fresh water or it's got stuff in it. I mean, that's what it's for.
Oh, so it measures against what actual purity resistance would be.
Yeah, right. So, well, purity, I mean, potable water, not necessarily.
Yeah.
But what he would want to use to measure relative density is specific gravity, and for that you need a hydrometer. It's a different device entirely. It's not electrical.
That's what we used in winemaking.
Yeah.
It's like a test tube with a float device in it, right?
Yes. So all he's showing you is that there's salt in the second glass, which he told you in advance. So it's not like it's particularly interesting. He's just trying to science it up with something, or sorry, technology it up. Don't want to use the wrong
right.
word.
I'm glad we've got that cleared up, because I thought that might well be the case. Anyway, yes, good point. What is next? I can't remember. I know what it is. It's it's Patty and Mark, and they're introducing. Let's see.
This will be good.
Hang on. God, I'm crap tonight.
There's not as many people, not nearly as many. There's only 4 million people, 4.5 million for the entire New Zealand country.
Do you think there's more flat earthers than there are people in New Zealand at this point in time on May 15th, 2019?
Overall, yes, absolutely.
I mean,
just in America alone. Yeah, of course. In fact, I'd love to redo the stats and for the American numbers, because you remember that we were in the 3 to 4 percentile just in America, and every percentage point in America is 3.5 million people. And that's not even including the big number, of course, is the 30+% of younger people from 18 to 24.
Well, this leads into, nice segue, to a guy who is looking at numbers and stats in a way, but in a bigger way, he's trying to connect flat earthers with each other. And his name is David Hicks, and I hope he'll join us now.
Hey everybody, Dave Hicks, Zoom Truth here, straight out of New Egypt, New Jersey. The long-awaited Flat Earth People Finder is now open for business. Seriously, this is hopefully a resource that I hope more people sign up for and use than have been doing it already. I don't know, I mentioned it yesterday in my video, which seems to have like almost 1,000 views, and for some reason there aren't 1,000 people who signed up. So I don't know, maybe it's too much trouble to sign up to this thing. But we really need to show our strength in numbers, folks. We need to see how many people are out there. And we can't be shy about it, man. You can't be afraid. By the way, you do not need to put in your full address. You can put in your city and state where you live, or freaking somewhere close by if you want to, if you're that freaked out. You don't even have to put your real name in here. As you can see, Poopy Pants put in Trent. So that's fine. That's good, because you can still click on him, and you're going to be able to get his contact information as far as an email. And if you ever want to get together and send him an email and tell him, hey man, I know the Earth is flat too, you can do it. So in the meantime, you need to sign up first. You need to add me to the map. So in order to do that, you go up to add me to the map. You click on it. It's pretty freaking simple. You go over, you put in a fake name if you want. I don't care. Let's call myself Poopy2. Right? So Poopy2. And I go, I'm going to have categories. Right now, I just have flat earthers, but soon I'm going to have First Amendment auditors and a bunch of other ones. So, a number of different truthers can find their way together, and hopefully we can bleed into each other and start to see that, we are more connected in our truths than we are. And we all see, different truths.
I love the way he ironically said, "Oh, you can email Poopy Pants if you."
I'll just put in Poopy too. Just put in a fake name. You don't even care.
I'm just shocked with 9 million flat earthers in America alone. He's only gotten a few hundred signups. That's weird.
I know.
That's
insane.
Yeah, I should update you that that was a couple of weeks ago when he recorded that, and since then he's been on a couple of hangouts and stuff. As you can see, he was on Patty's, and so I think at the last one I heard, he said he'd got 650, and they've probably got more than that now, to be fair.
Yeah, I saw about 800.
Yeah, but out of the millions and millions, only 650.
Yeah.
Hey, whatever. Hey, if they hit the numbers, they hit the numbers. But I bet there are a lot of people out there like me that would sign up for this just for the shits and giggles.
Right. That's
signing up,
isn't it?
Yep.
But to be fair, I don't think that he is necessarily expecting loads of people. I think that he's the guy, if you remember, we had him on weeks and weeks back, where he organised this 1,000-man march that 8 people turned up to. And yeah, and he was saying at the time, he keeps organising these events and people don't come, and he doesn't know if there really are that many flat earthers and if there really is that interest in it. So this is kind of a development of that. This is his way of, well, you heard him say it, we need to see how many of us there are, kind of thing. So I don't know whether he's necessarily expecting it to be a massive success. I think he seemed a lot happier with it, the last time I heard him speak about it, where they got hundreds in it. But I don't know, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I'd like to hear where they even get these figures from. Like how do they know that there are millions of flat earthers?
From that poll.
Yeah, it comes from that survey where they said that, I can't remember what it was. They'd asked people about the shape of the Earth, and people, did they know of the shape or something like that. I don't think they necessarily asked if it was flat, did they? Do you remember?
No, I remember they asked things like, have you ever thought that for any period of time thought that the Earth was flat, things like that, or thought the Earth was not round or not spherical. But I will say that when I looked pretty hard at it, and I will say it does even when you strip out all the nonsense, it does seem to imply about 4 to 5% of people were at one point believing in non-spherical Earth. So that's a pretty big number.
When you say at one point, like, do you mean between the ages?
Yeah, it's phrased
5
like
to
it could have
10.
been your past. Yeah, it's phrased that way, so it could have been your past. Yeah.
Okay, so
I mean, I'm meeting more and more people in real life.
I haven't met very many people, but you know, I don't know. There's 100,000 people in my town, so what's 4 to 5% of that? You know.
I've
It's
never
like
met
40
any.
to 40 to 50, right?
No, a lot more than that.
No, it's like 4 to 500. Yeah.
You have 100,000 people. 4% is 4,000.
It's 4,000. Jesus, dude, I'm terrible at this.
Quick math.
Dude, there's I've met 2 people in my town total that think the Earth is flat. 2.
How did you meet? How they tell you?
We met at that. There was like a flat Earth meetup in a hotel, literally blocks from my house, and I walked there. I told you guys about this.
I'm dying to meet one, but I never have. I mean, I even went to their fucking event, excuse my French, and still couldn't get them to engage with me.
Yeah, I want to meet one too, and I've never even. I ask my Uber driver all the time because I figured an Uber driver is likely to be flat. I don't know why I think that, but
right,
It's so weird because like you go up to them and you say hi, and they're like, "Oh, do you think the Earth's flat too?" And there's just something in me that cannot say yes, and I cannot come up with an answer that'll be smooth and get into the conversation so that they feel comfortable with me. So it's tough. It's tough to talk to them. Like they close up immediately. They're like, "Oh, he doesn't think the Earth's flat. This could be terrible."
Yeah.
I feel guilty because I'm sorry. Go ahead, Curve.
I was just gonna say, as I recall, Lewis, she was wearing overalls and nothing else.
She also had a T-shirt on. Let's just calm down.
Anyhow, I was just gonna say that the dude at work that told me, or he like told the class, like when we were in our orientation or whatever, he like said it like casually, and then at the same time I was in the server like on the laptop or whatever, and I was telling like another dude like what I was doing, like who I was talking to, and so it was just like really, I was like trying not to like have him see what I was explaining to the other dude, because he literally was saying like he wasn't saying it was flat, but you could tell he was implying it. And then later on he told me, he's like, "Yeah, man, I don't trust any of that shit." He's like, what did he say? Oh yeah, that's right, because he said something about the sun is getting smaller all the time, and eventually it's going to be so small that we fall into it, and then there's like a supernova. We see supernovas. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, well, that's what they teach you. I don't believe any of that stuff. I was
Dude.
like, okay.
It's like he's misunderstanding things that are being told. Like, yes, the universe is spreading apart, and eventually the stars outside of our galaxy won't be visible, but that's very, very, very far in the future. Like, thousands and thousands of generations away.
Well, a lot of time that's where a lot of the belief comes from, I think, is just like a general misunderstanding mixed with like a disbelief in what they actually, like what they think they understand. Yeah.
And too much weed. Don't forget too much weed.
Yeah. I always imagine, it's funny Scott said Uber drivers, because I always imagine it'll be like a delivery driver, you know, like bring the takeaway. He'll go, the Earth's flat, mate.
Or like a Tesco driver, for example.
I think you're mistaken because they've all got jobs. So.
Well, Rig 5 here in Austin is a Uber driver, and he's a flat earther.
Right, and who's that other guy? Dave Hinkle. He's an Uber driver, and he flat smacks people while he's Ubering.
Yeah, that's what Rig 5 says he does. He when he get in 24/7 and just tell people, like, tell a story about how he just, you know, talk to somebody about it, and he says that he works up like small little pitches basically.
I'd love to see that come up on my phone, like Dave Hinkle is arriving with 1.2 stars. 3 minutes.
I know. Whenever you see the video of people being flat smacked, it's like they look like they're trapped in the corner by
right.
Like their eyes are wide. They're looking for an exit as fast as they can.
They totally are, aren't they? They really look like, oh shit, why did I stop? You know, aren't they? They've got that
And then when they finally get away, the flat earthers turn to themselves and like, "We got him! We got another one, dude! High five!"
Yeah, she'll go home and she'll look up this. She'll look into this.
Oh man.
Anyway, okay, what's next? Not a clip, but I'll just stick this on. Ranty is raising money again. This time for a drone. And he's done another Ranty-a-thon, or should we call it a begathon? So I just thought I'd mention.
Begathon!
I just thought I'd mention this in passing. Probably won't bother doing too much bitching about all the money that is changing hands, but.
Oh, that's what I love ranting about, Jim.
But Ranty is the worst for this, isn't he? I mean, he just.
Yes.
It's non-stop. I mean, about. I don't know. What was it? 2 or 3 weeks ago, he did a hangout saying he was about to leave. If more people didn't sign up to his Patreon, he couldn't do it anymore. And now suddenly he's forgotten about that, and he needs more stuff to do it with, which doesn't seem very honest to me.
Nope. It's classic. Loads of streamers do this nonsense. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm gonna quit. Give me money.
They always phrase it in such a way that it's like, this next thing is the breaking point. There's so many other things I could do, but this next thing, if I can just get there. And so, like, you have the drone, right? And there's actually been a lot of talk about people trying to do experiments with drones.
Right.
Making them fly straight. So I don't know. To me, I can see how he's justifying it in his own head to make it honest and not like, oh, I need money, guys. Please give me money.
Tim Osmond says that Ranty will crash it within a month.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I bet he copied Tim. I bet he just was looking at Tim's videos. I wish I could do that.
Probably, yeah. I bet you that's what it is. Right, well, we've got one massive clip left, which is my video that I've just made, which is addressing Quantum Eraser. And it's a little bit dry, but, you know, this is my show, so I get to inflict stuff like this upon you. And we can perhaps have a quick chat about it afterwards. So it's 15 minutes long, I'm afraid. But I want to get this out there, so please endure or enjoy. He said, not ready again. Hi YouTube. Sorry it's been so long since I made a video. I have a couple of new things in the works, so stay subscribed for those. This video is a response to a recent delusional and arrogant rant by Quantum Eraser, who was responding to some comments I made in Jose's Hangout regarding Quantum's personal version of science and the scientific method, which is now being parroted by other flat earthers who have decided that an ex-soldier and a failed actor are the go-to guys for all things scientific. By the way, make sure you check out the channel, Jose JG Gonzalez, for a great daily debate on this subject. I've already offered a critique of Quantum Eraser's personal version of science and the scientific method in my video Faking Flat 4. Please give it a watch if you would like to see this and the wider story of the Flat Earth debate team's descent into fundamentalist lunacy. Briefly, for those unfamiliar, the strategy of this argument is to define science as only experiments conducted according to a specific 4-step method. Anything that falls outside of this is rejected as pseudoscience, and that includes entire fields of science including astronomy, cosmology, geology and paleontology. And this in turn allows Quantum Eraser to pretend that Genesis 1 is a literal description of reality, and he and his flat friends to pretend that the Earth is flat. Speaking of fundamentalist lunacy, here is Flat Earther OU Chris in Jose's debate hangout, faithfully chanting QE's doctrine, followed by QE's excited response.
That's right, that's your take. I can pull up multiple independent sources that quote the same concept, the scientific method, how it works. Here's one. Step 1, make an observation. Okay, that's always the first step. If you ask a question, you're asking a question based on something you've observed, whether you like it or not, right? Okay, so make an observation. Step 2, ask a question. Step 3, formulate a hypothesis. Let's see, it's going to the next page. Step 4, conduct an experiment. Step 5, analyze data and draw conclusions. I mean, it's all basic. This is Science 101. This isn't
exactly
confusing.
Did you
There
not?
isn't anything.
Did you not listen to what Jeremy read
on,
to
just-
you?
just
I
let
mean,
me
that's
respond to
just
this, Joe.
one of many ways in which we can.
No,
And
it's
what
the
you've
only
got,
way.
what you've got, Chris, you're right. It's Science 101. This is a basic idea of a scientific method that's taught to students, like it said in one of my quotations, to give them an idea of the process. And that's fine. That's fine to teach that to kids when they're at that basic level. And when it's and that method is used in physics and chemistry, but it's not the only method. Because we can't use that to do things like natural experiments when we make large studies of the breeding patterns of birds, for instance, and all of that just gets chucked out.
That's not. There's a
this
reason.
idea.
That's not science. There's a reason that what you call diet science, isn't science.
Well,
And
you're going to have to go out and convince the world.
Jesus Christ, bro! Can I get a sentence in?
Because the only reason that you can say that's not science is because you're subscribing to quantum eraser's bogus method.
Yeah, by what authority?
The rest of the world does not negate things like that as science. So there's a mismatch somewhere.
Jem.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, right. So this is Gimp Panda, King Dunning-Kruger, Pretender Clown of the Millennium. I mean, like I've said, all you have to do is leave these people open up their mouths, and they just bash their own heads in with a shovel. So let's go over to some of the things he said here. All right, Gimp Panda. That method is used in physics and chemistry, but it's not the only method. Well, the reason that method is used in physics and chemistry, Clown Show, is because physics and chemistry are actual sciences. That's why. So it's not the only method. There's only one scientific method. That's why they call it the scientific method. You see this? You see that? It's singular. There's no S on the end. You daft muppet.
Oh, really, Quantum? Here are a few sources that disagree with you. From Erin Wood, Coordinator of Science Education and NASA Mission Consultant at the University of Colorado. There is no single scientific method. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Percy W. Bridgman puts it this way. Science is what scientists do, and there are as many scientific methods as there are individual scientists. From The Physics Teacher, Volume 37, May 1999. Many texts teach the scientific method illustrated step by step. The idea that there is such a method, or that memorizing the steps can be helpful, is an anathema to practicing physicists. Ian Hacking, philosopher and historian of science at the University of Toronto, has this to say. Why should there be the method of science? There is not just one way to build a house, or even to grow tomatoes. We should not expect something as motley as the growth of knowledge to be strapped to one methodology. From the American Association for the Advancement of Science, The Nature of Science. There simply is no fixed set of steps that scientists always follow. No one path that leads them unerringly to scientific knowledge. There are, however, certain features of science that give it a distinctive character as a mode of inquiry. From William F. McComas, Professor in Science Education at the University of Arkansas. The notion that a common series of steps is followed by all research scientists must be among the most pervasive myths of science, given the appearance of such a list in the introductory chapters of many pre-college science texts. In this next clip, we will see that it's these pre-college science texts that are the source of Quantum Eraser's deception.
From Chemistry of Bot and Maureen Helmstein, PhD Biomedical Sciences. The scientific, here we go again, method. The number of steps varies from one description to another, mainly when data and analysis are separated into a separate step. But this is a fairly standard list of 6 scientific method steps, which you're expected to know for any science class.
Clearly, Quantum is reading from something prepared for children. Here is some more expert opinion on the matter. My apologies if this gets a bit repetitive, but I want to show that this is a generally held view, while Quantum's requirements for science are a cobbled together version of his own making. From the University of California, Understanding Science. Misconception. There is a single scientific method that all scientists follow. Correction. The scientific method is often taught in science courses as a simple way to understand the basics of science testing. In fact, the scientific method represents how scientists usually write up the results of their studies, and how a few investigations are actually done. But it is a grossly oversimplified representation of how scientists generally build knowledge. The process of science is exciting, complex, and unpredictable. It involves many different people engaged in many different activities in many different orders. From the National Science Teachers Association of the USA, position statement on the nature of science. Science is characterized by the systematic gathering of information through various forms of direct and indirect observations, and the testing of this information by methods including, but not limited to, experimentation. From William J. Beatty, Department of Chemistry at the University of Washington. Scientists don't follow a rigid procedure called the scientific method in their daily work. The procedure list is a myth spread by K6 texts. It is an extremely widespread myth, and even some scientists have been taken in by it, but this doesn't make it any more real. Real scientists use a large variety of methods. Hypothesis, experiment, conclusion is one of them, and it's very important in experimental science such as physics and chemistry, but it's certainly not the only method. It would be a mistake to elevate it above all others. If the scientific method listed in a grade school textbook proves that astronomy is not a science, then it's the textbook which is wrong, not astronomy. Dr. John Denker, Professor at the Institute of Theoretical Physics, University of California. Voltaire famously remarked that the Holy Roman Empire was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire. It's an idiomatic expression. In English there are hundreds of such expressions. An idiomatic expression must never be taken literally, otherwise it crosses the boundary from idiomatic to idiotic. It is important to realize that the scientific method is an idiomatic expression and can be quite misleading. For starters, it ought to be plural, not singular, because there is not a single method for doing science, just as there is not any cut and dried method for writing a novel. In fact, scientists use a great many methods. Alas, misconceptions about this are appallingly common among non-scientists. People who have not done any research, nor even seen it done, sometimes equate the scientific method with a step-by-step hypothesis testing approach. This is a travesty. It makes research seem hundreds of times easier than it really is. In addition, overemphasis on one particular method makes it impossible to understand the history of science. From the Geological Society of America, The Nature of Science and the Scientific Method, a source which Quantum Eraser cites himself. Research clearly shows that most students and teachers do not adequately understand the nature of science. For example, most teachers and students believe that all scientific investigations adhere to an identical set of steps known as the scientific method. The scientific method in actuality isn't a set sequence of procedures that must happen, although it is sometimes presented as such. Some descriptions actually list and number 3 to 14 procedural steps. No matter how many steps it has or what they cover, the scientific method does contain elements that are applicable to most experimental sciences, such as physics and chemistry, and is taught to students to aid their understanding of science. I can find many, many more citations like these. Note, my citations are not single lines that are used to build a supposed position. They state the actual position of people actually working in science. And that is what I was trying to convey to OU Chris. Sadly, Quantum Eraser hasn't finished making a complete tit of himself yet. He is also confused about natural experiments and how they are used.
Duh! The next train wreck. This is a belly laugher. I love this. All right, Gimp Panda. We can't use that to do things like natural experiments. He said we can't use that and that is the scientific method, to do things like natural experiments. When we make, large studies of, I don't know, the breeding patterns of birds, for instance, I don't know what it is with these pretender clowns, but birds have been showing up everywhere. First it was birds landing, now breeding patterns of birds. Last week we had supernatural birds' nests. These people got a thing for birds or something. I don't know. So let's get to this natural experiments, right? Natural experimental studies are often recommended as a way of understanding the impact of population-level policies on health outcomes or health inequalities. We're not seeing any birds humping in here yet there, Jeremy. These are important areas of public health policy. Check these out. Suicide prevention, air pollution control, public smoking bans, and alcohol taxation, where natural experimental studies have already contributed a convincing body of evidence. So, not seeing any birds humping in here, Jeremy. What's up? From the Encyclopedia Britannica, natural experiments are used most commonly in fields of epidemiology, political science, psychology, and social science. Where's the bird humping science here, Jeremy? Epidemiology, what's that? Right? That's population health. Human population health, not birds. Political science, you're a train wreck. Let's take a look at some natural experiments. I mean, this guy, what do? You just make stuff up? You don't even know what a natural experiment is. Let's take a listen to some of these.
Yes, let's take a look at some natural experiments. A natural experiment is an empirical study in which the individuals or clusters of individuals are exposed to the experimental and control conditions that are determined by nature or by other factors outside the control of the investigators. As we can see from the examples shown here, there are plenty of natural experiments involving birds that are very easy for an intellectually honest person to find. Quantum Eraser is an ignorant buffoon who relies on willful ignorance and extreme arrogance to sound convincing. There are no reputable sources that define science the way he does. Pretending that there are is dishonest and or delusional. His independent variable word game is just that. A silly word game designed to make him feel like he is winning an argument. Anyone who chooses to subscribe to his nonsense is simply a victim of low-quality fundamentalist Christian indoctrination. Thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. So, that will be on my channel shortly.
That was extremely in-depth.
That was quite thorough, yeah. I'm impressed.
Thank you very much.
I mean, just quote after quote after quote that just obliterates him. It's just painful. I mean, they don't just like say something that's kind of counter to him. They literally specify what he said, talk about how that's an obvious myth and that people are dumb to think that, and then correct him. It's like crazy.
It makes sense, like, why he bothered to go to such extremes, like call you Gimp Panda, use your example and ridicule your bird's example.
Right.
Like what you said in this video obviously really got to him. So I don't know.
Called you the king pretender clown of the millennium.
Yeah.
It's also crazy how much of what he says is just mocking. Like, he doesn't actually make many arguments. Like, he makes like 2 in there, and they're not, particularly strong. They're just random.
But what I think is funny, though, is how he scripts the mocking.
Yeah.
That's actually written there in the email program as well.
Well, we know if he goes off script, he totally loses his mind. So maybe that would happen even with insults.
I can just imagine. Oh.
Sorry, man. He doesn't just script it. He shows the script on screen while he's talking.
Yeah. Like I can see him just sitting there for 30, 45 minutes typing this shit up.
Trying to figure out which hostage font to use.
Right, and which ones to put in bold and caps and color, all this stuff, man. It's ridiculous.
You pretender clowns better bring $1 million to the drop-off. Oh, no, sorry, I got confused.
But he has managed to convince over time so many people that this is all there is. That this is it. You know.
Why do they think that?
I don't know. I guess because
this allows them to dismiss science, which interferes with their fantasy.
Right, and I think more than that, I think when this is played out in real life, often people just get tied up in a knot, especially when Nathan and crew are doing it, because you know, they have a few extra caveats about, you know, natural things and all this sort of other bollocks that goes into it to make it, you know, absolutely impossible to present anything that complies anyway, you know.
Well, that and his confidence and everything. He's asserting it like if you don't believe him, you're an idiot.
Right. Yeah, that seems to be the way, and of course, as you saw with OU Chris right at the beginning, he's going, well, I've got citations that say it, you know. So I think what my quotes were saying are right. There is a lot of stuff out there that is actually confusing for people. I mean, one of the things I did come across was that, I mean, you saw some of the citations that Riley used earlier for independent variables were from school science fairs.
Yeah.
And there are some science fairs which do not allow astronomy or paleontology projects because of there isn't an experiment.
It's interesting. Although I bet you that's more about what the kids will learn doing it than it is about whether they think it's science or not.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a science fair, so it's they're made to specifically come up with some experiment that you're supposed to be able to present to, you know, the class and everything. So it's got to be something you can get your hands on.
Like, I can just see them having a checklist at the end. Like, you should be able to tell what an independent variable is. And you're not going to do that in astronomy, even though it's still a science. So, you know what I mean? I could easily see that being considered maybe too easy or something.
Right. Interesting, though, that I thought.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Because I was in an argument with Riley, and I asked him, I said, look, if you're right, produce a reputable source that says astronomy is not science. And he claimed to have one, although he wouldn't show it to me.
Well, why would he show it to you?
I don't know. He reckoned that he wanted to know what I would accept before he showed it to me. In case when he showed it to me, I then found a reason to reject it. So I suspect it may have been from a science fair thing. Or you know, it was Riley, so maybe there was no such thing at all, you know.
A lot of their cherry picking is of the kind where, like, somebody will be having a context of what they're saying. So they're saying, I don't know, like, they're talking
Snap
about
the
how,
wand in half.
No, they have a context of, like, they're saying, like, they'll say, you know, you're going to want to have an independent variable for your dependent variable, and the context will be chemistry freshman 101 lab, where all year long you're going to be doing those kinds of controlled experiments. And so he'll take this context where it says that, but then he'll act as if that sentence implies totality of what it is. Like, you know, somehow the sentence is saying, and has this addendum added to it, which is, and there is no other thing that could possibly be science. He adds that in, of course, it's not really there, but he finds a sentence that's just declarative and then decides that that's the entire range of possibilities. And I noticed he did the same thing with the natural science thing, the natural experiment thing that he brought up. It was just, you know, he gave an example of where it does apply and then sort of acted as if, well, it can't apply to birds because I just gave you a list and birds weren't on the list.
Right. Well, I mean, who would
quite a few of Riley's quotes that he had people read were just definitions of what an independent variable is. And you can see that they have to be part of the only exclusive method of scientific investigation. They simply defined it.
Right. Yep. But they'll get that from somewhere else. They'll get some other little quote, and which is the point I was trying to make, and they sort of build their position. You know, they say this is the position because this quote says this, and then this quote says that. So when I stick these two together, it means this other thing. You know, and it drives me nuts. But what was I going to say? I was going to say something I forgot.
Shout out to Shroomy.
Oh yeah, of course. Shout out to Shroomy. Shout out to Twit. Shout out to Validation Boy. A shout out to Vinny TV. Shout out to Charlie. Hi to Hitchhikers. Me mouse has just given up. Monkey Sage, hello to you. Jose JG Gonzalez, I'm sorry I haven't put you in the description. I forgot. I will add you. I said Timmy, didn't I? Lottie's here. Flashburn's here. I was kind of trying to get out of doing this today. Skyfly Pie is here. Does anybody else want to do any?
I thought I should.
Zep Teppy's here. Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. Someone complained about it and said, "Why do you keep doing that?" Nobody's really bothered. So I don't know.
I mean, maybe don't do everyone, like, because the people you do it to, they'll become. It'll be a thing.
It'll be more special. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. I'm sorry if I didn't do you. Say hello at the right time next week, and I will do you.
You.
Right time.
And not in a gay way.
No.
Shall we wrap it up? I guess. How long have we been going? 70 minutes. That'll do, I guess. So yeah, check out I will be, if anyone wants to watch that very dry, long video again, I'll be uploading it on my Gem Panda 2012 channel. Where is the thing that tells me what to say at the end?
Oh, extra shout out to Shroomy because he also came out as a lesbian. So shout out Shroomy.
Oh,
I saw that.
Yeah. So congratulations.
They're all coming out as lesbians.
I think I might come out as a lesbian too. Tranny lesbian.
Not very many men can come out as lesbians these days.
No. They don't have the guts that he has.
Yeah,
Very
brave.
Proud of it.
Indeed, yeah.
Oh, I will say, if anyone would like to be on the panel, please drop me a line. You're welcome to join us 1 week and come and offer your opinion. So, anyway, join us again for more fabulous flatness soon. In the meantime, if you see something you think should be included in the show, please post a timestamp link in the comments section of this video. Or join our Discord server. The link is in the description, along with channel links for tonight's panel. Our Discord server has over 1,400 members, and we managed to keep a conversation going virtually 24/7. We welcome members with opposing views, so click the link and join us. Thanks again to tonight's fabulous panel, and thanks to all of you for watching. We will be back around the same time, maybe next week, maybe not. So until then, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Have a great evening. I haven't got the thing ready again. Oh, God, I've got to get better at this. Here we go.
Maybe you shouldn't say that every time you don't have it ready, though.
I know, I just do it every time, don't I? This isn't even...
They'll have a great evening all the same.
It just doesn't want to play.
Don't leave yet.
Oh, Joe.
All right, good night, everyone.